The year was 2147 and Earth had entered a new era. For centuries, humanity dreamed of reaching the stars, of meeting alien life and forging alliances with beings from other worlds. Now that dream had become reality. The United Nations Space Council announced the arrival of an alien delegation from a distant planet called Xiran. It was a momentous occasion, one that would change the course of human history forever. The event took place at New York's International Spaceport, a sprawling facility built specifically for interstellar visitors. Hundreds of reporters, government officials, and curious onlookers gathered to witness the landing of the Xiran's ship. The vessel descended gracefully, its crystalline surface shimmering like a diamond catching sunlight. It hovered briefly above the ground before touching down with a soft hum. A ramp extended and out stepped the aliens. Their appearance was both fascinating and unsettling. The Xirans were tall, insectoid creatures with elongated limbs and exoskeletons that gleamed faintly in the daylight. Their eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting the world around them in fragmented hues. Antennae protruded from their heads, twitching as if sensing every movement in the crowd. They moved with precision, their steps silent yet deliberate. Among the humans waiting to greet them was Daniel Carter, a man in his early 40s with sharp features and a calm demeanor. He worked as a negotiator for the United Nations, specializing in high-stakes diplomacy. Beside him stood Laura Bennett, a linguist in her late 30s with curly brown hair and a warm smile. Her job was to bridge the gap between species, ensuring clear communication during this historic encounter. At the forefront of the alien group was Krill, the leader of the delegation. His presence commanded attention. Unlike his companions, he wore intricate markings on his exoskeleton, glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. He carried himself with authority but also a hint of unease, as though he were walking into unfamiliar territory. Krill approached the podium set up for the welcoming ceremony. Through a translator device attached to his chest, his voice echoed across the spaceport. "We come in peace," he began, his tone measured and calm. "Our people seek understanding, cooperation, and friendship with yours." The crowd erupted into applause, but there was something in Krill's words that struck Daniel as odd. Peaceful intentions were expected, but the way Krill spoke, his pauses, his careful choice of words, left an impression of hidden motives. After the formalities, Daniel and Laura escorted the Xirans to their quarters. The accommodations had been specially designed to mimic conditions on Xiran, complete with controlled humidity and artificial gravity tailored to their physiology. As they walked through the corridors, Krill slowed his pace and turned to Daniel. "You're kind. You are unlike any other we have encountered," Krill said, his voice low enough that only Daniel could hear. "Your history is written in blood." Daniel stopped mid-step, taken aback by the comment. Before he could respond, Krill continued walking, leaving him to ponder the meaning behind those cryptic words. Laura noticed Daniel's expression and leaned closer. "What did he say?" she asked quietly. "He said our history is written in blood," Daniel replied, frowning. It sounded like a warning. Laura raised an eyebrow. "A warning? Why would they warn us about our own history?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but I have a feeling this visit isn't just about making friends." Later that evening, after settling the Xirans into their quarters, Daniel and Laura met in a small conference room to discuss the day's events. The walls were lined with monitors displaying live feeds of the aliens' activities. So far, they hadn't done anything suspicious, but Daniel couldn't shake the sense that something wasn't right. "Do you think Krill knows more than he's letting on?" Laura asked, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "It's possible," Daniel replied, leaning back in his chair. His body language, the way he hesitated when he spoke, it felt like he was holding something back. And that line about our history being written in blood? That wasn't just casual conversation. Laura nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe we should dig deeper into what they know about us. If they've studied Earth, they might have access to information we aren't aware of." "That's not all," Daniel added. Did you notice how they reacted when they first saw the crowd? They looked almost nervous, like they weren't sure what to expect. Laura tilted her head. You're reading too much into it. They're probably just overwhelmed. This is their first time interacting with humans after all. Maybe, Daniel said, though he didn't sound convinced. But I've been doing this long enough to trust my instincts. Something about them feels off. As the night wore on, Daniel decided to review some files on the Zyran's home planet. According to preliminary reports, Zyran was a highly advanced civilization known for its technological prowess and diplomatic skills. Yet despite their achievements, they seemed wary of conflict, preferring negotiation over aggression. It made sense then that they would emphasize peace during their visit. But why choose Earth as their destination? What did they hope to gain? Meanwhile, in their quarters, the Zyrans gathered in a circle, speaking rapidly in their native tongue. Their voices were melodic yet urgent, punctuated by clicks and chirps that no human ear could fully comprehend. Krill stood at the center, his antennae twitching as he addressed his team. We underestimated them, Krill said, his tone grave. Their adaptability, their resilience, it surpasses even our simulations. If we are not careful, this mission will end in disaster. One of his advisors, a slender female named Vren, stepped forward. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Sharing too much may provoke them unnecessarily. No, Krill replied firmly. We must proceed as planned. Humanity holds the key to our survival, whether they realize it or not. But we must tread carefully. They are dangerous, far more so than they appear. Back in the conference room, Daniel closed the file on his tablet and sighed. Whatever secrets the Zyrans were hiding, he knew they wouldn't reveal them easily. For now, all he could do was stay vigilant and prepare for whatever came next. Little did he know the truth would soon unravel in ways he could never have imagined. The next morning, the atmosphere at the United Nations headquarters was tense but hopeful. Representatives from governments around the world gathered in a large conference room to begin formal discussions with the Zyrans. The room was filled, with translators, scientists, and military advisors, all eager to learn more about these alien visitors. Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett were seated at the main table, ready to facilitate communication between the two species. Krill entered the room accompanied by two of his advisors. His exoskeleton glowed faintly under the fluorescent lights, and his antennae twitched as he scanned the room. He took his seat across from Daniel and nodded politely. We are honored to be here, Krill said through the translator device. Let us work together for the benefit of both our peoples. The first few hours of the meeting focused on basic introductions and cultural exchanges. The Zyrans shared information about their planet, describing Zyran as a world of towering crystalline structures and vast oceans of liquid energy. They spoke of their society, which valued harmony and collective decision-making above all else. In return, Earth's representatives highlighted humanity's achievements in art, science, and technology. It seemed like a promising start, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Krill was holding back. As the discussion shifted to potential trade agreements, Krill suddenly interrupted. Forgive me, he said, raising a claw-like hand. Before we proceed further, I must ask, what is your history with war? The question caught everyone off guard. Daniel glanced at Laura, who looked equally surprised. War wasn't exactly a topic. They expected to come up during diplomatic talks. Still, Daniel decided to answer honestly. War has been a part of human history for thousands of years, he explained. We've fought over land, resources, beliefs, and power, but we've also learned from those conflicts. Many of our greatest advancements came out of the need to survive and rebuild. Krill nodded slowly, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Daniel. May I see examples of these wars? Records, perhaps, or visual representations? Daniel hesitated. Sharing Earth's violent past with an alien species felt risky, especially when they didn't fully understand the Zyrans' intentions. But refusing could make them appear uncooperative. After a brief consultation with Laura and the other human representatives, Daniel agreed. A team of historians quickly compiled holographic recordings of key battles throughout history, from ancient clashes like the Battle of Thermopylae to modern conflicts like World War II and beyond. When the holograms flickered to life, the room fell silent. The images showed soldiers charging into battle, tanks rolling across desolate landscapes, and cities reduced to rubble. Explosions lit up the air, and cries of pain echoed hauntingly. For the humans present, it was a sobering reminder of their capacity for destruction. For the Xyrans, it was something else entirely. Krill's reaction was immediate and unsettling. His antennae quivered violently, and his glowing markings dimmed as if drained of energy. One of his advisors whispered urgently in their native language, while another shifted uncomfortably in their seat. Krill leaned forward, his voice trembling slightly. This ferocity, this determination to fight even when hope seems lost. It is extraordinary. Laura noticed the change in Krill's demeanor and leaned closer to Daniel. He looks shaken, she murmured. Do you think they're afraid of us? I don't know, Daniel replied softly. But if they are, it might explain why they're so interested in our history. After the presentation ended, Krill excused himself, claiming he needed time to process what he'd seen. The rest of the meeting was spent discussing less controversial topics, though the mood remained subdued. When the session concluded, Daniel and Laura stayed behind to review the day's events. That was strange, Laura said, shaking her head. Why would they care so much about our wars? It doesn't add up. Maybe they've had bad experiences with aggressive species before, Daniel suggested. Or maybe they're trying to figure out if we're a threat. Either way, we need to find out more about them, Laura insisted. If they're hiding something, we can't afford to be in the dark. Later that evening, Laura decided to investigate further. She sneaked into the monitoring station where technicians were keeping tabs on the Xyrans' activities. On one screen, she saw Krill pacing back and forth in his quarters, speaking rapidly with his advisors. Though she couldn't understand their language, she recognized certain patterns in their tone: urgency, concern, and even fear. Curious, Laura activated a translation algorithm she'd been developing. The program wasn't perfect, but it managed to pick up fragments of their conversation. Words like unstoppable, destruction, and survival appeared on her screen. Her heart raced as she pieced together what little she could. It sounded like the Xyrans were worried about something, or someone. And whatever it was, it had something to do with humanity. The next day, tensions ran higher than ever. During another round of negotiations, Krill seemed distracted, barely paying attention to the discussions. When pressed for details about their plans for cooperation, he gave vague answers, citing the need for further analysis. Daniel grew increasingly frustrated. Krill, Daniel said finally, leaning forward. You've asked us to share our history, yet you haven't been entirely open with us. If we're going to build trust, we need transparency. Krill hesitated, his antennae twitching nervously. For a moment it seemed like he might refuse to respond. Then, with a deep sigh, he spoke. Very well, there is something you must know, but it cannot leave this room. Daniel and Laura exchanged wary glances. Go on, Daniel urged. Krill paused, as if choosing his words carefully. Centuries ago, my people encountered another species, a race known as the Vorthax. They were conquerors, spreading across the galaxy and destroying anyone who stood in their way. No one could stop them. Not until they came to your planet. Laura's eyes widened. Earth? The Vorthax invaded Earth? Not recently, Krill clarified. It happened long before your recorded history. Your ancestors faced them, not with advanced weapons or technology, but with sheer willpower. You adapted, improvised, and fought back with everything you had. Against all odds, you drove them away. Since then, the Vorthax have spoken of your kind with fear and hatred. They call you the Deities of War. The room went silent. Daniel stared at Krill, struggling to process what he'd just heard. Are you saying that humans have already defeated one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy? Yes, Krill replied grimly. And now the Vorthax are regrouping. If they discover that humans still exist, if they realize how far you've come, They will not hesitate to destroy you. That is why we are here. To warn you. To prepare you. Laura sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. So that's why you're so interested in our wars. You wanted to see if we still have that same fighting spirit? Precisely, Krill said. Your resilience is unmatched. But the Vorthax are relentless. They will not stop until you are eradicated. We believe that working together may give us a chance to survive what is coming. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to wrap his mind around the implications. Humanity had unknowingly earned a reputation as warriors capable of taking down an intergalactic empire. Now, that legacy had placed them in the crosshairs of a vengeful enemy. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. For the rest of the day, the humans debated how to proceed. Some argued that the Xyren's warning should be taken seriously, while others dismissed it as fear-mongering. General Marcus Hale, a gruff but experienced military leader, voiced his concerns. If what Krill says is true, we need to start preparing, immediately. We can't afford to be caught off guard. Others, like Emily Dawson, a skeptical journalist covering the event, remained unconvinced. How do we know this isn't some elaborate ruse? She demanded. What if the Xyren's are using this story to manipulate us into giving them access to our resources? Despite the skepticism, preparations began quietly. Scientists worked with the Xyren's to analyze their technology, hoping to gain insights that could strengthen Earth's defenses. Meanwhile, Daniel and Laura continued to monitor the aliens closely, determined to uncover any hidden motives. As days turned into weeks, the reality of the situation sank in. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and its survival depended on facing threats far greater than anything it had encountered before. Whether the Xyren's were allies or adversaries remained unclear, but one thing was certain: Earth's future hung in the balance. The days following Krill's revelation were a blur of activity. The United Nations Space Council convened emergency meetings to discuss the threat posed by the Vorthax. Military leaders, scientists, and politicians debated how best to prepare for an enemy they had never seen but were told to fear above all others. General Marcus Hale, a no-nonsense man in his 50s with a gruff voice and sharp eyes, pushed for immediate action. We don't have time to waste, he said during one heated session. If these Vorthax are as dangerous as Krill claims, we need to start fortifying our defenses now. Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett found themselves at the center of the chaos. As key figures in the negotiations with the Xyren's, they were tasked with gathering more information about the Vorthax while ensuring humanity didn't appear weak or unprepared. It was a delicate balancing act, and both of them felt the pressure mounting. Krill, for his part, seemed eager to help, but only to a point. He shared fragments of data about the Vorthax, including schematics of their ships and descriptions of their tactics. According to him, the Vorthax relied on overwhelming force and superior technology, but their greatest strength lay in their hive mind structure. Each Vorthax soldier was connected to a central nexus that coordinated their movements and strategies. Destroying the nexus could cripple their entire fleet. While this information was valuable, it raised more questions than answers. Why were the Xyren's so willing to share such sensitive details? Were they genuinely trying to help, or was there another motive behind their cooperation? Daniel voiced these concerns during a private meeting with Laura. I appreciate what they're doing, Daniel said, pacing back and forth in their makeshift office. But everything feels off. They're giving us weapons blueprints, battle plans. It's almost like they expect us to fight their war for them. Laura nodded, her brow furrowed. That's exactly what I've been thinking. What if the Xyren's aren't here just to warn us? What if they want us to take on the Vorthax so they don't have to? It's possible, Daniel admitted. But we can't ignore the fact that they're scared. You saw how Krill reacted when we showed him our history. He wasn't faking that fear. True, Laura replied. Still, we should be careful. Trusting them completely could put us in a worse position than we're already in. Despite their suspicions, humanity had little choice but to accept the Xyren's assistance. Scientists worked around the clock to study the alien technology, reverse engineering components to integrate them into Earth's existing systems. Pilots trained in simulators designed to mimic Vorthak's combat scenarios, learning how to outmaneuver enemies with faster ships and deadlier weapons. Meanwhile, Laura focused on deciphering the Ziran's language, hoping to uncover any hidden messages or warnings buried in their communications. One evening, after hours of poring over recordings, Laura stumbled upon something unusual. In a conversation between Krill and one of his advisors, she heard a phrase repeated several times: the beacon. At first she thought nothing of it, assuming it referred to some piece of Ziran equipment. But as she listened closer, she realized the context was different. The tone was urgent, almost panicked, as if the beacon represented a critical element in their plan. Laura brought her findings to Daniel immediately. "I think there's more going on here than we know," she said, handing him a transcript of the conversation. "They keep mentioning a beacon. Do you think it's related to the Vorthaks?" Daniel studied the document, his expression growing darker. "It's hard to say without more context, but if it's important enough for them to talk about in private, we need to find out what it is." Their investigation hit a snag when they realized the Zirans were keeping certain areas of their ship off limits. These restricted zones were heavily guarded, and even the monitoring systems installed by Earth's technicians couldn't penetrate their shields. Whatever the beacon was, it seemed to be hidden within those forbidden sections. Tensions between humans and Zirans began to rise. Some members of the UN accused Krill of withholding vital information, while others argued that humanity had no right to demand full transparency from their visitors. The debate grew heated, threatening to derail the fragile alliance. Amid the turmoil, Krill requested another private meeting with Daniel and Laura. When they arrived at his quarters, he looked more agitated than usual. His glowing markings flickered erratically and his antennae twitched constantly. "I must explain something," he said, his voice low and strained. "Something I should have told you sooner." Daniel crossed his arms. "Go ahead, we're listening." Krill hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "The beacon I mentioned, it is not ours. It belongs to the Vorthaks. It serves as a signal, guiding their fleets to potential targets. If they detect its presence near Earth, they will come not just to conquer, but to annihilate." Laura's eyes widened. "Are you saying the beacon is already here? On Earth?" "No," Krill replied quickly. "Not yet, but it will be soon. One of our scout ships detected faint traces of its signal emanating from deep space. The Vorthaks are moving closer, and they may reach your solar system within months." "Why didn't you tell us this earlier?" Daniel demanded, his frustration boiling over. "This changes everything. I feared causing panic," Krill admitted, "and I needed to confirm my suspicions before sharing them. Now that I'm certain, I urge you to act swiftly. The beacon must be intercepted before it reaches Earth's orbit. Otherwise, your planet will become a target." Daniel and Laura exchanged uneasy glances. Intercepting the beacon sounded simple enough, but accomplishing such a task would require resources and coordination far beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Worse still, failure could mean disaster. "We'll do what we can," Daniel said finally, his tone measured but firm. "But you need to give us more than vague warnings and half-truths. If we're going to work together, we need complete honesty." Krill nodded solemnly. "You have my word. From this moment forward, I will share everything I know." Over the next few days, Krill followed through on his promise. He provided detailed maps of the Vorthak's fleet's trajectory and offered guidance on how to disable the beacon once it was located. He also revealed that the beacon emitted a unique frequency, one that could be tracked using modified Earth satellites. With this new information, scientists scrambled to upgrade their detection systems, hoping to pinpoint the beacon's location before it was too late. As preparations continued, public opinion began to shift. News of the impending threat leaked to the media, sparking widespread fear and outrage. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, demanding answers and calling for stronger measures to protect Earth. Some accused the UN of prioritizing alien interests over human lives, while others praised the efforts to unite humanity against a common enemy. Through it all, Daniel and Laura remained focused on their mission. They spent countless hours coordinating with military strategists, analyzing data, and planning contingencies. Despite the mounting pressure, they refused to lose sight of their goal, ensuring humanity's survival. One night, as they reviewed the latest satellite readings, Laura turned to Daniel with a weary smile. "Do you ever wonder what life would be like if we hadn't met the Zyrans?" she asked. "If we'd gone on blissfully unaware of the dangers out there?" Daniel chuckled dryly. "Sometimes. But then I remember that ignorance wouldn't change anything. The Vorthax would still be coming. At least now we have a chance to stop them." Laura nodded, her expression softening. "You're right. We might not have chosen this fight, but we're ready for it. That's what makes us human." Unbeknownst to them, Krill watched the two from a distance, his antennae twitching softly. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Humanity's resilience, creativity, and determination were qualities he had underestimated. And, perhaps, just perhaps, they would prove to be the galaxy's salvation. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Humanity was racing against time, trying to prepare for an enemy it had never seen but knew was coming. The Zyrans' warnings about the Vorthax beacon weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Scientists worked tirelessly to upgrade Earth's satellites and detection systems, while military leaders devised strategies to intercept the signal before it reached Earth's orbit. Despite the urgency, tensions between humans and Zyrans continued to simmer. Krill remained a constant presence, offering advice and sharing more details about the Vorthax. He explained that the beacon wasn't just a homing device. It also served as a psychological weapon. Its signal could disrupt communication networks, confuse navigation systems, and even cause panic among populations. If the beacon entered Earth's atmosphere, it would cripple humanity's ability to mount a defense. Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett found themselves stretched thin, balancing their roles as negotiators with the growing demands of preparing for war. They spent hours in meetings reviewing plans and coordinating efforts with General Marcus Hale, who had taken charge of Earth's military response. Hale was a pragmatic man, focused solely on results. He didn't trust the Zyrans completely, but he recognized the value of their technology and expertise. "We need to test their weapons," Hale said during one briefing. "If we're going to use them in battle, we have to know they work." Daniel agreed. "I'll talk to Krill about running simulations, but we should also consider building prototypes ourselves. Relying too much on alien tech could leave us vulnerable if something goes wrong." Laura nodded. "And we can't forget about the beacon. Every day we delay gives the Vorthax more time to get closer." Workshops were set up around the globe to study the Zyrans' designs. Engineers and scientists collaborated to adapt alien technology for human use. Plasma-based cannons, energy shields, and faster-than-light propulsion systems became the focus of intense research. Pilots trained rigorously in simulators designed to mimic Vorthax combat scenarios. Among them was Ryan Mitchell, a skilled pilot in his 30s with sharp reflexes and a fearless attitude. Ryan had been selected to lead one of the first squadrons, tasked with intercepting the beacon. "I've never flown anything like this," Ryan said during a training session, gesturing at the sleek, alien-inspired fighter jet. "It's fast, maneuverable, and armed to the teeth, but it's also unpredictable. One wrong move and you're toast." Samantha Cole, another pilot in her late 20s, chimed in. "That's why we train. We can't afford mistakes out there. Not with the fate of the planet on the line." While the military prepared for battle, public opinion remained divided. Some people praised the efforts to defend Earth, calling it humanity's finest hour. Others accused world leaders of exaggerating the threat to justify increased funding for space programs. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with demonstrators demanding transparency and accountability. Emily Dawson, a skeptical journalist, led the charge, publishing articles questioning the Zyrans' motives. "Are we being manipulated?" Emily wrote in one editorial. "Why should we trust aliens who won't share all their secrets? For all we know, this beacon is a fabrication meant to control us." Her words resonated with many, fueling distrust and paranoia. Daniel and Laura tried to address these concerns during press conferences, emphasizing the importance of unity in the face of danger. But skepticism lingered, making it harder to rally global support. Amid the chaos, Krill grew increasingly anxious. His glowing markings dimmed visibly, and his antennae twitched almost constantly. He confided in Daniel one evening, his voice heavy with worry. "Time is running out. My people detected a surge in the beacon's signal. It is closer than we anticipated." "How close?" Daniel asked, his heart sinking. "Less than 2 months," Krill replied. "If we do not act soon, it will be too late." The news sent shockwaves through the UN headquarters. Plans were accelerated, and resources were redirected to prioritize the interception mission. A team of elite operatives was assembled, including Laura herself, to locate and disable the beacon. The mission was risky, requiring them to venture deep into space aboard a modified spacecraft equipped with Zyran technology. The launch date approached. Tensions reached a breaking point. Arguments broke out between scientists, military personnel, and politicians over the best course of action. Some believed the beacon should be destroyed remotely using missiles, while others argued that such an approach might alert the Vorthax prematurely. In the end, it was decided that a direct intervention was necessary, even if it meant putting lives at risk. On the eve of the mission, Daniel met with the team in a secure briefing room. Maps of the beacon's projected path were displayed on screens, along with diagrams of its structure. Laura stood beside him, her expression resolute, despite the gravity of the situation. "This isn't just about stopping the beacon," Daniel began, addressing the group. "It's about proving to ourselves, and to the galaxy, that humanity is capable of facing any challenge. We may not have experience fighting wars in space, but we have something no other species does: resilience, determination, and most importantly, hope." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Each member of the team knew the risks involved, yet none hesitated to step forward. They understood what was at stake, not just their own lives, but the future of Earth itself. Later that night, Laura found herself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She thought about everything that had happened since the Xeran's arrival, the revelations, the preparations, the sacrifices. It felt surreal to think that humanity's survival depended on a handful of individuals venturing into the unknown. "You look troubled," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Krill standing there, his exoskeleton glowing faintly in the dim light. "Just thinking," she replied, "about how much has changed in such a short time." Krill nodded slowly. "Change is inevitable when faced with great challenges. Your kind has adapted remarkably well. I have faith in your success." "Faith is nice," Laura said with a small smile, "but faith alone won't stop the Vorthax." "No," Krill agreed, "but courage will, and you have plenty of that." The next morning, the team boarded the spacecraft, a hybrid vessel combining Earth engineering with Xeran innovation. As they prepared for takeoff, Daniel joined them on the launch pad. He shook hands with each member, offering words of encouragement. When he reached Laura, he paused, his expression serious. "Be careful out there," he said quietly. "We're counting on you." "We won't let you down," Laura promised, gripping his hand firmly. With that, the spacecraft lifted off, ascending into the sky and disappearing into the vastness of space. Back on Earth, millions watched live broadcasts of the launch, holding their breath as the countdown ended. For better or worse, humanity's fate now rested in the hands of a few brave souls willing to face the unknown. As the spacecraft hurtled toward its destination, Krill stood silently in the control center, watching the monitors. His antennae twitched softly, and his glowing markings flickered faintly. Though he had done everything he could to aid humanity, he couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles were yet to come. Still, he allowed himself a moment of quiet optimism. Perhaps, just perhaps, the deities of war would rise once more to protect their home, and the galaxy, from the shadows of destruction. The spacecraft named Aegis sailed silently through the void of space. Its sleek design was a blend of human ingenuity and Zeran technology, with shimmering panels that reflected the light of distant stars. Inside, the team worked tirelessly, monitoring systems, analyzing data, and preparing for what lay ahead. Laura Bennett sat at the main console, her eyes fixed on the screens displaying the beacon's projected path. Beside her, Ryan Mitchell piloted the ship, his hand steady on the controls. "It's strange," Laura said, breaking the silence. "Out here it feels like we're completely alone. But we know we're not." Ryan glanced at her briefly before returning his focus to the navigation panel. "Yeah, but being alone is better than having company like the Vorthax, at least for now." The rest of the team included Samantha Cole, a sharp-witted engineer who had spent weeks studying the Zerans' energy shields, Dr. Alan Brooks, a physicist tasked with disabling the beacon once they reached it, and Captain Elena Torres, the mission leader, whose calm demeanor masked a fierce determination. Each member played a crucial role, and they all understood the stakes. As the hours passed, tension began to build. The beacon's signal grew stronger, indicating they were closing in on their target. According to Krill's calculations, the beacon was housed inside a small drone-like vessel designed to self-destruct if tampered with improperly. Disabling it would require precision and luck. "We're approaching the coordinates," Ryan announced, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Prepare for visual confirmation." The ship's scanner swept the area, and soon a faint blip appeared on the radar. Moments later, the beacon came into view, a sleek metallic object floating eerily in the darkness. Its surface pulsed, with a faint blue glow, emitting the signal that could doom Earth if left unchecked. "That's it," Laura whispered, her heart pounding. "That little thing. It's the key to everything." Captain Torres gave the order to move closer. "Everyone stay sharp. We don't know what kind of defenses this thing has. Brooks, you ready?" Dr. Brooks nodded, adjusting his glasses. "Ready as I'll ever be. Just get me close enough to work my magic." The Aegis maneuvered carefully, its engines humming softly as it positioned itself near the beacon. Samantha monitored the energy readings, ensuring the ship's shields remained active in case the beacon retaliated. So far, there was no sign of hostility, but none of them trusted the situation. "Brooks, go," Captain Torres commanded. "We'll cover you." Dr. Brooks stepped into the airlock, suiting up in a modified spacesuit equipped with tools provided by the Zerans. As the airlock opened, he floated out into the cold emptiness of space, tethered to the ship by a thin cable. His movements were slow and deliberate as he approached the beacon, his gloved hands trembling slightly from nerves. "Talk to me, Brooks," Laura said over the comms. "What are you seeing?" "It's intricate," Brooks replied, his voice crackling slightly. "The design is unlike anything I've ever encountered. Layers upon layers of circuitry, all interconnected. If I cut the wrong wire—" "Don't cut the wrong wire," Ryan quipped, trying to lighten the mood. No one laughed. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter watched the live feed from Mission Control, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his chair. General Marcus Hale stood beside him, arms crossed, his expression grim. The room was filled with technicians and advisors, all holding their breath as they waited for updates. "They're doing everything right," Daniel muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "But it's not going to matter if something goes wrong," Hale grunted. "If they fail, we'll have to launch Plan B, and let's just say it's not pretty." Meanwhile, aboard the Aegis, Dr. Brooks continued his delicate work. Using a specialized device provided by the Zerans, he scanned the beacon's internal systems, searching for a way to disable it without triggering a catastrophic reaction. Sweat dripped down his forehead, though the temperature outside his suit was well below freezing. "I think I found it," Brooks said finally. "There's a central node controlling the signal. If I can sever the connection—" "Do it," Captain Torres ordered. "But be careful." Brooks hesitated for a moment, then made his move. With a precise motion, he inserted the tool into a narrow slot on the beacon's surface. The device emitted a soft hum as it interfaced with the alien technology. For a few agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, The beacon's glow dimmed, and the signal vanished. "We did it," Brooks exclaimed, relief washing over him. "The signal's gone." Cheers erupted inside the Aegis, and even those back on Earth allowed themselves a brief moment of celebration. But the victory was short-lived. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. "What's happening?" Laura demanded, her fingers flying across the console. "It's the beacon," Samantha shouted. "It's activating some kind of failsafe. Energy levels are spiking." Before anyone could react, the beacon exploded in a burst of light and heat, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The Aegis rocked violently, throwing the crew off balance. Captain Torres barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields at maximum. Get us out of here, Mitchell." Ryan gripped the controls tightly, fighting to stabilize the ship as debris from the explosion hurtled past them. The Aegis groaned under the strain, its hull creaking ominously. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the turbulence subsided, and the ship drifted into calmer territory. "Status report," Torres barked. "All systems functional, but the shields took a hit," Samantha replied, her voice tense. "We're lucky they held." "And Brooks?" Laura asked anxiously. "He's fine," Brooks answered, still tethered outside the ship. "Just shaken." Laura let out a shaky breath. "Good. Let's get him back inside and regroup." As the team recovered from the ordeal, Krill contacted them via a secure channel. His voice was urgent but calm. "Did you succeed? Is the beacon neutralized?" "Yes," Captain Torres confirmed. "But barely. It nearly destroyed us." Krill's markings flickered faintly. "You have done more than we could have hoped. The Vorthax will not find Earth so easily now." Back on Earth, news of the mission's success spread quickly, sparking celebrations worldwide. People gathered in streets and squares, waving flags and cheering for the heroes who had risked everything to protect their planet. For the first time in weeks, hope seemed to outweigh fear. But Daniel knew better than to relax. He turned to General Hale, his expression serious. "This isn't over. The beacon may be gone, but the Vorthax are still out there. They'll come eventually." Hale nodded grimly. "And when they do, we'll be ready. Thanks to your team and the Zyrans, we've bought ourselves some time. Now it's up to us to make the most of it." In the days that followed, humanity redoubled its efforts to prepare for the inevitable. Factories churned out weapons and ships based on Giran designs, while soldiers trained relentlessly for the battles to come. Scientists worked around the clock to improve Earth's defenses, determined to ensure that the next encounter with the Vorthax would end differently. For Daniel and Laura, the experience had changed them. They had seen firsthand the fragility of peace and the resilience of the human spirit. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew one thing for sure. Humanity would face whatever challenges came its way with courage and determination. As Krill observed Earth from his quarters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for the species he had once feared. Their ferocity, adaptability, and unwavering resolve were qualities rarely seen in the galaxy. Perhaps, he thought, the legends about humans being the deities of war weren't entirely misplaced. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but for the first time in centuries, Krill dared to believe that hope might prevail. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against the darkness, and perhaps, just perhaps, it would inspire others to do the same. The months that followed the destruction of the beacon were a mix of celebration and preparation. Humanity had won a small but significant victory, proving it could face the unknown and emerge triumphant. Yet, everyone knew the real battle was still to come. The Vorthax were out there, regrouping and rebuilding, and when they returned, it would be with a vengeance. On Earth, cities buzzed with activity as factories worked nonstop to produce advanced weapons and ships based on Zyran designs. Pilots trained in simulators, soldiers drilled in combat scenarios, and scientists refined Earth's defenses. General Marcus Hale oversaw the military buildup, ensuring every detail was accounted for. "We can't afford to be caught off guard again," he often reminded his team. "This time we fight on our terms." Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett remained at the heart of the effort, coordinating between human leaders and the Xyrans. Krill and his delegation continued to share knowledge, though their presence grew quieter as time went on. It was clear they were preparing to leave Earth, their mission nearing its end. But before they departed, Krill requested one final meeting with Daniel and Laura. They met in a secure chamber beneath the UN headquarters, the same place where Krill had first revealed the truth about the Vorthax. His glowing markings were dimmer now, and his antennae twitched nervously. He looked tired, as if carrying the weight of countless burdens. "It is time for us to return to Xyran," Krill began, his voice low and measured. "But before we go, I must tell you something. Something I should have said from the beginning." Daniel leaned forward, his expression serious. "What is it?" Krill hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "When my people first learned of your existence, we feared you. Your history of war, your relentless drive to survive. It terrified us. We believed you might pose a threat to the galaxy. That is why we came here. Not just to warn you about the Vorthax, but to assess whether you were a danger to others." Laura frowned. "So everything you've done, was it really about helping us, or were you testing us?" "Both," Krill admitted. "At first, yes, we were cautious, but over time, we saw something remarkable in your kind. You are fighters, yes, but also creators, builders, protectors. You do not seek conflict for its own sake. You endure it because you must. And that makes you different from the Vorthax, and from many others in the galaxy." Daniel let out a slow breath. "And what happens now? Are you leaving because you think we're ready, or because you're afraid of us?" Krill's antennae twitched slightly. "Perhaps both again. But know this. If the Vorthax come, they will not stop until Earth is ashes, or until they are defeated. And if that day comes, remember who you are. Remember that you are the deities of war." The title sent a chill through the room. It was a name given in fear, yet it carried a strange sense of pride. Humanity had earned it not through cruelty, but through resilience and determination. For better or worse, the galaxy now knew what humans were capable of. With that, Krill stood and bowed deeply, a gesture of respect rarely seen among his kind. "Farewell, Daniel Carter. Farewell, Laura. Bennett. May your strength inspire hope in all who see it." The Xyrans departed soon after, their crystalline ship ascending into the sky and vanishing into the stars. Though their presence had been brief, their impact was profound. Humanity had gained allies, enemies, and a deeper understanding of its place in the universe. Time passed, and Earth waited. The beacon's destruction had bought them precious months, but the Vorthax were patient predators. Their fleets moved slowly but steadily across the galaxy, searching for signs of life. When they finally detected Earth, it was not through the beacon, but through faint traces of energy left behind by humanity's growing technological advancements. The attack came without warning. One moment the skies were clear. The next, massive ships descended upon Earth, blotting out the sun. The Vorthax vessels were enormous, bristling with cannons and missiles. They unleashed devastation in seconds, obliterating cities and reducing entire regions to rubble. Panic spread like wildfire as millions fled for safety. But humanity did not cower. Under General Hale's command, Earth's forces launched a counterattack. Squadrons of hybrid fighter jets, piloted by men and women like Ryan Mitchell and Samantha, Cole soared into orbit to engage the invaders. Plasma cannons fired, energy shields flared, and explosions lit up the blackness of space. On the ground, soldiers fought valiantly to protect civilians, embodying the same spirit that had driven the Vorthax away centuries earlier. Despite their bravery, the odds were overwhelming. The Vorthax deployed biomechanical monstrosities, horrific, creatures fused with technology that adapted to every tactic humans threw at them. Cities burned, and casualties mounted. It seemed impossible to hold the line. In the midst of the chaos, Laura made a breakthrough. While analyzing data provided by the Xyrans, she discovered a critical weakness in the Vorthax fleet. Their hive mind relied on a central nexus aboard the flagship, a massive vessel hovering above Earth. If destroyed, the entire fleet would descend into disarray. "We need to take out the flagship," Laura told Daniel urgently. "It's our only chance." Daniel nodded grimly. "Then we'll do it, no matter the cost." A small team of elite operatives, including Laura herself, volunteered for the mission. Armed with Xeran weapons and guided by Laura's calculations, they boarded a modified spacecraft and set course for the Vorthax flagship. The journey was perilous, dodging enemy fire and navigating treacherous debris fields. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. As they approached the flagship, the team split into two groups. One would create a diversion, drawing attention away from the others. Laura, Ryan, and Dr. Alan Brooks infiltrated the ship through an airlock, moving silently through its labyrinthine corridors. The interior was a nightmarish blend of organic tissue and cold metal, pulsing with eerie light. "This place feels alive," Ryan muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. "It is," Brooks replied. "The Vorthax don't just build ships, they grow them." They reached the central chamber housing the Nexus, a towering structure surrounded by writhing tendrils. Laura quickly set to work, using a device provided by the Xyrans to interface with the alien technology. Her hands trembled as she entered commands, knowing one wrong move could trigger a catastrophic response. "Almost there," she whispered, sweat dripping down her face. Suddenly, the doors burst open and biomechanical creatures swarmed into the room. Ryan and Brooks opened fire, holding them off while Laura worked. Explosions rocked the chamber and alarms blared deafeningly. Finally, with a triumphant shout, Laura activated the device. The Nexus erupted in a cascade of sparks, severing the connection between the Vorthax and their fleet. Outside, the effect was immediate. The Vorthax ships faltered, their coordinated attacks dissolving into chaos. Seizing the opportunity, Earth's forces delivered a decisive blow, targeting the flagship itself. As it exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the remaining Vorthax retreated, fleeing into the depths of space. Back on Earth, the survivors emerged from shelters, blinking in the sunlight. The planet was scarred, its cities in ruins, but it was still standing. Humanity had prevailed against impossible odds, proving once again that it would not yield to despair. In the days that followed, Daniel and Laura stood together on a hill overlooking New York City, now a shadow of its former self. Construction crews were already at work, rebuilding what had been lost. The scars of war would take years to heal, but the spirit of humanity remained unbroken. "You were right," Laura said softly, "about us being the deities of war. Maybe it's not a title we wanted, but it's one we earned." Daniel nodded, gazing at the horizon. "And maybe it's a title we'll use to protect others, not just ourselves. If the galaxy knows we're willing to fight for what's right, maybe they'll see us as more than just warriors." As the sun rose over a battered but defiant Earth, humanity took its first steps toward a new future. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never forget the species that refused to give up, even in the face of annihilation.